Is the Samsung QN90C 2023 Neo QLED TV a good TV or a good monitor? Well, in this video, I'll be taking a look at the 43-inch size for the QN90C. I'll be taking a look at how it fares as a TV and a monitor. And if you stick around to the very end, I'll give my buying advice on what I would recommend doing depending on the situation you are in. Now, it's important to note that the 43-inch size is going to be very similar to the 50-inch size. All the other sizes will be using an entirely different panel than the 43 and 50-inch size. In the 43-inch and 50-inch size, you will see they're using a VA LCD panel. All of the other sizes are going to be using an ADS LCD panel. Now, this is the same panel that's being used in the Samsung QN85B of last year. Now, I had a pretty good review of the QN85B last year. I thought it stacked up quite well against the QN90B, but I'm not going to say too much about the ADS panel on the QN90C, but I did want to make you aware that there is a panel switch this year in the other sizes that aren't 43 and 50 inch. I'll do a separate full review on the ADS QN90C once I get my hands on it, but for now, we're talking about the 43 inch size. But when it comes to the new features, the ports, the menus, things like that, things that are here for 2023, you can apply that to the other sizes. But anytime we're talking about picture quality and the performance of the panel, we have to leave that to the 43 and 50 inch size variants, which is what we're talking about in today's video. So it's important to note that the 43 and 50 inch sizes will be capable of doing 144 Hz gaming. I saw a lot of comments out there. People are looking for this as a potential monitor, so I'll be reviewing it as a monitor and a TV in this video. Let's first go over what I think of it as a TV. Looking at it as a TV, you can see that the TV has all the ports that you would ever want as a TV, including 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, which is really beneficial if you have a PlayStation 5, Series X, and a PC that is capable of utilizing these ports. You also have an EARC port, so you can have your soundbar hooked up at the same time. These are all going to be great things to look for on a TV for gaming. Speaking of TV, we have to talk about the TV and streaming app selection. Most of the streaming apps that you look for are going to be found on this TV, as well as Samsung TV Plus, which is really good for just watching some of the older shows. I like this a lot. I think that Samsung's selection of apps is pretty good and they tick most of the boxes for TV buyers. So I would say it's pretty good in that category. Now, moving on to something people really care about, and that's picture quality. New for this year is going to be an upgrade in the processor with the Samsung Neural Quantum processor. This is going to be the same processor that was found in the S95B QD-OLED last year, and I thought that that TV had really good picture processing, and overall, you could see the upgrade from the QN90B to the QN90C in terms of the jump in picture quality. One of the things that I think Samsung does really well is going to be the micro processing when it comes to contrast and sharpening. I think they do a really good job with textures like mountains and landscapes, things like that. They can really clean those things up and make them look three-dimensional. So I think that Samsung does a really great job with their processor, and they're only second to Sony in my opinion in terms of the picture quality. One thing that wasn't so good on the S95B was the low bitrate streaming. Now, when I looked at the low bitrate streaming and the quality of it on the QN90C 43-inch, it didn't seem too bad. So I don't know if they tweaked the algorithm or did something with the picture processing in that, or maybe it's just completely different for QD-OLED. I'm not sure, but it did look a lot better than the S95B, so that was a pretty good sign. Let's talk about one of the elephants in the room here when we're talking about LCD TVs, and that's going to be blooming. So you're going to hear a lot of people talk about blooming when it comes to LCD TVs. It's going to be an easy thing to really pick on LCD TVs when it comes to blooming because that's just going to be one of the faults of having an LCD TV that's full array or mini LED based. It's just going to be that way. I'm sorry, but it's not an OLED. You can expect very similar black levels to an OLED, and a lot of times, if you're not really looking for it, you can be very surprised with how the image looks, how it is kind of OLED-like at times, but again, this is not going to replace an OLED, so keep that in mind. I did put this up against an OLED. I used my LG C1 48-inch to compare it, and I will do a full comparison of that in the future, so stay tuned. But I just wanted to talk about how it did next to it. Overall, I have to say it was a mixed result. There was a lot of scenes where you could tell that the Samsung QN90C was struggling against the OLED, but there are also some scenes where it did surprisingly well in some of the challenging content. It really just depended if the algorithm was working or not for the Samsung QN90C in terms of the dimming zones. When the algorithm was working as intended, you saw that the dimming zones were performing quite well. But when the dimming algorithm wasn't working as intended, you could see that there was quite a bit of blooming. Another thing I wanted to mention is that when you get the TV out of the box, the contrast might feel like it's a little bit off, and that's because the gamma seems to be a little bit raised out of the box. Bringing the gamma down a bit definitely helped a lot, and this matches up to what ratings found last year on the Samsung 43-inch QN90B. So 43-inch, 50-inch, fairly similar performance across the board from what I heard. So I think that what you're looking at here is going to be very similar dimming algorithms, very similar setup structures. So a lot of the problems with the raised gamma might apply. Another thing that is going to apply is going to be the viewing angles. So the 43 and 50-inch size don't have the wide viewing angle technology filter. This is going to give you better contrast overall, but it's going to also give you worse viewing angles. And let me say right now, these viewing angles are really bad. I am not a fan of the viewing angles for this TV, and for a monitor, when I was using it, there was times where I could actually see the colors fade away on the side of the TV, like it was a gradient. I would have like a solid color and then it would just fade almost as if it was a gradient. That's how bad the viewing angles are on this TV. So if you shift your head a little bit, you will start to see the colors wash out. And I am not a big fan of that. And anybody looking for this as a TV and you're going to have anybody watching at an angle, if you're not looking at this thing straight on, that's going to be an issue. And even when you're looking at it straight on, you can kind of see the colors will drop off a little bit to the side. So that is something to be aware of if you're looking for it as a TV or a monitor. Again, what I'm saying only applies to the 43 and 50-inch VA panels. The ADS panels won't have this problem, even though they don't have the ultra-wide viewing angle technology applied. They don't need it because they are ADS panels and they already have fantastic viewing angles. So that's something you want to keep in mind when we're talking about viewing angles. That's only applying to the 43 and 50-inch size. But if you're using it for productivity and you're using it for anything with color involved, like graphics design or video editing, you will run into some issues like I mentioned. The color just seems to fade away like it's a gradient. I don't like that at all, and I wasn't a big fan of that, and that's why I personally couldn't use it as a monitor. Alright, so with the viewing angles, you can't really use it as a TV if you're having people around the TV, but if you're using it as a bedroom TV, I do think that it's a really good TV when you're looking at it straight on. And as a monitor, while I can't recommend it as a productivity monitor because of the issues that I stated, as a gaming monitor or as a gaming TV, it's fantastic. There are a lot of great things to say about the gaming features on this TV and the gaming performance overall. It's just really great across the board. I didn't have any issues at all gaming on this TV, and for the most part, I didn't notice any downsides with this TV either. There was no inverse ghosting, but I did run into some issues with regular ghosting. It wasn't too bothersome, and it wasn't much more than any other typical LCD TV that I've reviewed in the past. That's something you got to keep in mind. If you want something that doesn't have ghosting, then you're going to want to go with an OLED TV. Most LCD TVs are going to have a little bit of ghosting, and if they don't, then they're probably going to be tuned a little bit too hard, and then they'll have inverse ghosting. So you can't really win with LCD TVs in that regard. So let's talk about the HDR and the HDR impact from this TV. One of the changes for 2023 is the ability to select active or static tone mapping. And when you select active, the picture pop is so crazy on this TV. If you're somebody that likes a more accurate picture, use static and you'll be pleased with the image. But when talking about gaming, there's basic and advanced. If you use advanced, that's going to be one that targets more of a picture pop mode, but keep in mind you have to go into the settings and change everything to your liking once you adjust these features. I do like it on advanced. Once I changed it, I thought it was probably my go-to mode for gaming, and the picture quality and the color performance of the TV was really great for gaming. And I can't say enough positive things about this TV when it comes to gaming. It still has some of the negative downsides that you have to look for when it comes to LCD TVs, like the local dimming performance. It's not going to be all there, but it is probably the best of any LCD TVs that you can find on the market. I think Samsung does a really good job at allowing the local dimming to shine more than most LCD TVs. Some LCD TVs just turn it off completely, which you don't really want that when you're talking about gaming on a full array or mini LED TV. Really quickly, let's talk about sound. The sound on this TV isn't really great, and I would highly recommend getting an external soundbar if you can, at the very least. So overall, the reflection handling on this TV isn't too bad. There is some diffusion. You don't see a lot of light scattering like you do on some of the QN90Bs with the VA panel and the ultra viewing angle. I shined some different light sources on the TV itself so you could see how it handles the light. Thought it wasn't too bad. It wasn't crazy like the QN90B, like I said, but I did want to make sure I included this clip in here so you can see what was going on. So let's get to the buying advice. Do I recommend buying this TV? For the most part, I would say that you could skip this TV unless you're looking at it for primarily being a bedroom TV, or if you're looking for it as a gaming monitor or a gaming TV in general. The problem with recommending it as a gaming monitor is that there's actually better gaming monitors out there in that size range. If you're looking for this size particularly and you're in a brighter room, then I could see it making sense as a gaming TV. If you're in a more darker room, then looking at an LG OLED, because it is the same type of price, if you are in a darker room, then yes, you will probably feel like the LG OLED does a better job with gaming. But it's not all pretty for the LG OLED versus the QN90C. I did think that the QN90C had better performance in terms of banding when it comes to looking at the colors in the sky. I saw much more color banding on the LG OLED than I did the Samsung QN90C, so that's also something you might want to keep in mind. So while I do like it as a gaming TV, and if you need that size particularly, then I would definitely look in that direction if the price is right. But you can look at the Samsung QN90B 43-inch and probably get a very similar performance at a cheaper price, so maybe go that route instead. If you're watching this video around the same time as like Black Friday, chances are the QN90C might be a really good bargain, and I can recommend it in that case. I'll have this TV and the QN90B linked in the description below if you're interested in buying any TVs. It does help out the channel, so thank you very much if you end up doing that. If you guys got value out of this review, please hit the like button and consider subscribing for future content. And if you want to watch more on the QN90C and see what other features are available on this TV, check out this video right here where I go over the HDR features in this TV.